Mad-Eye Moody is one of the toughest characters in the Harry Potter series. He's been to hell and back during his lifetime of fighting dark wizards. The films portrayed him rather well. Brendan Gleeson was a great choice. That being said, they did leave a lot out from the books. So in this video, I'm going to break down his character as I go through the entire life of Mad-Eye Moody from the books. Alastor Moody was born into a family known for being renowned Aurors, or wizards and witches that served as the wizarding police or dark wizard catchers. Their family was a pure-blood family. Alastor knew that he wanted to become an Auror like the rest of his family at a very young age. When he turned 11, he went to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. While in school, he had a lot of pressure on him. He knew that only the best of the best would be able to become an Auror, as you need to have top grades in school to even qualify. On the test that 7th years take, the NEWTs, you need to get all outstanding or exceeds expectations, the two highest grades, and must do this on at least 5 NEWTs. Moody was able to accomplish this after a lot of hard work during his 7 years at Hogwarts. Moody not only became an Auror, but he became the best Auror. He shined most during the First Wizarding War when Voldemort and his army of Death Eaters arose. At the height of the First Wizarding War, he joined Albus Dumbledore's alliance, or the Order of the Phoenix, to fight Voldemort and his army of Death Eaters, and Moody was a key member of the team. Over the years, he fought too many Death Eaters to count, and led both the Ministry and the Order to many victories. Moody made it his job to think the way the dark wizards do, which helped him catch and stop countless threats to the Ministry and the wizarding world. During his prime, many Ministry members admired Moody, including Arthur Weasley. He did, however, get in trouble with the Ministry quite a few times. This was because one of his tactics while on the job was to attack first and ask questions later. Moody was so effective that half the cells in Azkaban were full because of him. While on the job, Moody used many objects that were known as dark detectors to help him in his pursuit of catching dark wizards. He had a sneaker scope, an object that beeps, whistles, and lights up if someone is doing something untrustworthy nearby. He also had a secrecy sensor, an object that vibrates when it detects concealment and lies. And he also had a faux glass, which shows the shadowy figures of your enemies moving around inside of it. The closer they are to you, the clearer they become, and when it shows the whites of their eyes, that's when you know you're in trouble. One Death Eater that Moody spent 6 months hunting down was Igor Karkaroff. He fought hard, but in the end, Moody did not let his 6 months of tracking Karkaroff go to waste, and he captured him and sent him off to Azkaban. While Moody was tough, he wasn't afraid to hold back with certain things. He never descended to the level that the Death Eaters were on. He never killed if he could help it, and he almost always brought people in alive where possible. Everything changed, however, when Barty Crouch made it legal for Aurors to use the 3 unforgivable curses: the Imperious Curse, which lets you take control of the victim, the Torture Curse, and the Killing Curse. Even with this law in place, allowing him to use these spells, he rarely did. In one fight, however, he was forced to use these spells while dueling Evan Rosier. Rosier decided that he would rather fight Moody than come quietly, which led to Moody taking his life. This fight in particular stood out for Moody because even though he won the battle, it came at a cost. Moody lost a large chunk of his nose in the fight, courtesy of Rosier, before Moody killed him. This was not the only scar and injury that he received during his time as an Auror. In retirement, his appearance was described as looking as though his face had been carved out of weathered wood by someone who had only the vaguest idea of what human faces are supposed to look like. Every inch of his skin seemed to be scarred. He had a carved wooden leg, ending in a clawed foot, and one eye missing, replaced with a blue magical eye. Although the loss of his eye didn't come until later in his career, which I'll talk about in a second. Moody sustained all of these injuries during his time as an Auror, fighting against Voldemort and his Death Eaters. This shows just how dedicated he was to his job. His job was his whole life, and his appearance showed this. He never married, never dated, and he never really had any close relationships besides his friendship with Dumbledore. When Voldemort tried and failed to kill Harry Potter, leading to what looked like his death, his followers either fled, fought, or pleaded not guilty due to the Imperious Curse. Moody set out to finish those that tried to flee or fight. To Moody's fury, Barty Crouch made a deal with Igor Karkaroff to set him free if he gave the Ministry names of known Death Eaters. Moody went to his trial and harshly judged Karkaroff for his cowardice for giving up his own allies. He half-jokingly said to his longtime friend Albus Dumbledore that they should take the names and put him back in Azkaban. Karkaroff ended up giving the name of Augustus Rookwood, a ministry worker who worked in the Department of Mysteries. He also gave up the name Barty Crouch Jr., Barty Crouch Sr.'s son. They sent Karkaroff back to Azkaban to investigate the people that he had given up, and when they found out that he was right, they set him free, something that made Moody very angry. During this trial, Moody still had both of his eyes. This means that he did not sustain that injury until after the Wizarding War ended. Although in the movie, he does have his magical eye during the trial, but as I said, this video is based on the books. There are actually many differences between the movie and book versions of Mad Eye appearance-wise. In the books, he has gray hair, while in the movie he had sort of reddish hair. In the books, he has a wooden leg, while in the movie, he has a metal leg. In the movies, they gave him a strap for his magical eye, while in the books, he does not have that. He's also known for wearing a bowler hat in the books, which never appears in the movies. In that same trial that dealt with Karkaroff giving up names of Death Eaters, he also mentioned Severus Snape. Dumbledore stood up to vouch for him, saying that he was no more a Death Eater than he was. Moody greatly disagreed with his friend on this. When Dumbledore stood up to say this, Moody wore a look of deep skepticism behind his friend's back. Moody lost his eye in a fight after the Wizarding War ended. It's not entirely known how, but a good guess would be that it happened while he was rounding up the last remaining Death Eaters after Voldemort's fall. The replacement eye was blue, quite the opposite of his original dark and beady eye. The replacement was no normal glass eye though. It was extremely magical and had many special abilities. It could rotate in every direction, and it could see through almost any object. Some things we know that the eye was able to see through include the back of his head,
the old codger can see at the back of his head,
through Lavender Brown's wooden desk, through the bushes in the maze of the third task, and even through Harry's invisibility cloak. Being able to see through the cloak is especially impressive because the cloak is one of the Deathly Hallows, meaning that the eye is on the same level of magic as the 3 Deathly Hallow objects. His magical eye gave him a huge advantage in his final years as an Auror. Moody's career as an Auror was incredibly successful, but towards the end, his years of fighting dark wizards started to affect him in a negative way. He began to get extremely paranoid and suffered from PTSD. He had made himself loads of enemies, mainly the families of people he had locked up. He started seeing dark wizards everywhere and couldn't tell the difference between a handshake and attempted murder. One day, a witch shouted behind him on April Fool's Day, and he ended up attacking her. Another time, he thought that one of his birthday presents contained a cunningly disguised basilisk egg. He smashed it to pieces, only to realize that it was a carriage clock. When people saw this, many in the ministry started to lose favor in him, which is why he retired. Arthur Weasley was one of the few that still had great respect and admiration for him, but that wasn't enough to save his reputation. In retirement, he was always on alert, perhaps too much. He always preached for constant vigilance, a rule he followed in his later years. He began to prepare his own food and drinks at all times because he thought it would be too easy for dark wizards to poison him if he didn't do this. He always carried around a hip flask, which was the only thing he drank out of. He did not trust normal open cups because he thought someone could slip something in it. All of this started to make him become a joke in the wizarding world, many calling him a nutter. He was eventually associated with the boy who cried wolf, reporting intruders in his home or people coming after him a bit too often. People started saying things like, Moody thinks a morning is wasted if he hasn't discovered 6 plots to murder him before lunchtime. And they gave him the nickname Mad Eye Moody, partly because of his magical eye, and partly because he literally went mad in the eyes of most people. While retired, Moody lived in a heavily guarded house in a mostly Muggle neighborhood. When Dumbledore asked him to teach Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts for 1 year, he agreed as a special favor to his old friend, but after that, he said he was going back into retirement. Sirius and a few others share the theory that Dumbledore asked Moody to teach that year because he knew that Igor Karkaroff, who is now the headmaster of Durmstrang, one of the schools competing in the Triwizard Tournament, would be there all year. Who better to keep an eye on him than the man who locked him up and spent 6 months pursuing him? This hiring, however, caused several ministry officials to raise their eyebrows at Dumbledore. The night before Moody was supposed to go to Hogwarts, he was attacked. Voldemort, Wormtail, and Barty Crouch Jr. came up with a plan based on information a ministry worker named Bertha Jorkins revealed to them. After being tortured, she revealed that the Triwizard Tournament was taking place at Hogwarts that year, and that Moody was teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts. Crouch and Wormtail prepared Polyjuice Potion beforehand and went to Moody's house. Moody put up a good fight, but they eventually subdued him. They then took his wooden leg, his magical eye, and some of his hair for the Polyjuice Potion, and locked him in his own trunk. Crouch drank the potion and took the form of Moody. He then put on the wooden leg and the magical eye, and he pretended to be Moody when Arthur Weasley arrived after the Muggle police had been called. Crouch had made dustbins move around the yard and told Arthur that he had heard a disturbance. Arthur just assumed that the dustbins had been moved by a cat or something like that, and Moody was just being his normal paranoid self, which is exactly what Crouch had planned. Arthur had to modify the memories of a few Muggle cops, which led to an article being written about it by Rita Skeeter, criticizing both Moody and Arthur. Crouch then packed up all of Moody's clothes and dark detectors to help him watch his back. He grabbed the case that the real Moody was in and left for Hogwarts. He had to keep the real Moody alive and under the Imperius curse. This way, he could continue to use his hair for the Polyjuice potion. Crouch also needed him alive so that he could learn more about the role that he had to play. He tortured and questioned Moody to find out about his past, learn his habits, and make sure that he could fool even Dumbledore, the longtime friend of the real Moody's. Crouch took on Moody's appearance and life, teaching classes, talking to Dumbledore, and pushing his and Voldemort's plan forward. He continued to keep Moody under the Imperius curse and locked in his trunk. He pulled loads of Moody's hair out due to the fact that he had to take Polyjuice potion every hour or else he would turn back into himself. He played the role very well and fooled everyone. Karkaroff had a mixture of mingled fear and fury when he came face to face with who he thought was Moody. After 10 months of Crouch living Moody's life and the real Moody being locked up, Crouch and Voldemort's plan was almost successful. Voldemort got his new body as they had planned, but he failed to kill Harry, who escaped. Crouch was about to kill Harry, still looking like Moody, when Dumbledore, Snape, and McGonagall burst in to stop him. Dumbledore had finally discovered that he wasn't the real Moody, because the real Moody would not have taken Harry out of his sight after what had happened that night. They found the real Moody locked in the trunk, knocked out. He looked thin and starved. Dumbledore climbed down into the trunk beside the sleeping Moody and saw that he was very weak and was freezing. He ended up going to the hospital wing for the rest of the night, where he lay motionless in bed at the far end of the wing. By the time the end of the year feast came around, the real Moody was able to sit at the staff table with the other professors with his magical eye and wooden leg back in place. He was very twitchy, jumping every time someone spoke to him. His fear of attack, that was already very high, increased even more after his 10-month imprisonment in his own trunk. He started to have trouble with his magical eye. It was getting stuck in mid-rotation due to Crouch using it. He kept having to take it out and put it in a glass of water to fix it. Now that Voldemort was back, Dumbledore relaunched the Order of the Phoenix, and Moody was one of the first to join, once again coming out of retirement. He and the Order protected both Harry and the prophecy that had to do with Harry and Voldemort. The Order was not only fighting dark wizards, but the Ministry as well. The Ministry decided that Dumbledore and Harry were wrong about Voldemort's return, and turned them into fools in the media. Moody took Nymphadora Tonks under his wing to train and help her as she started her career as an Order. Toward the end of the summer, Moody and a team of Order members went to Privet Drive to pick Harry up. When they got there, Harry called him Professor Moody, which he responded to, saying, "I don't know so much about Professor. Never got round to much teaching, did I?" Harry found it weird being around the real Moody after spending a year with Crouch, who he thought was the real Moody. When they got there, Moody immediately questioned whether Harry was the real Harry or an imposter. Lupin confirmed it was him by asking Harry what his Patronus was, to which he answered a stag. Harry put his wand back in his pocket, and Moody yelled at him, telling him not to do that. "What if it ignited? Better wizards than you have lost buttocks, you know." Tonks rolled her eyes, which Moody told her he saw through the back of his head thanks to his magical eye. When Harry asked what was going on with Voldemort and the wizarding world, Moody told him to shut up and said that they weren't discussing anything there as it was too risky. Because Harry was underage, they couldn't apparate, and the Ministry of Magic was watching the Flu Network, so the only way to get Harry to the Order's headquarters was to fly. Before they left, Moody put a disillusionment charm on Harry, making him blend in with the background or object he stands in front of like a chameleon. Moody was disappointed that the sky was clear because he was hoping some clouds would give them cover. Moody then gave everyone instructions on where to fly to make sure that Harry was covered from all angles.
Stay in formation, everyone. Don't break ranks if one of us is killed.
He told Harry that if they were all killed, to keep flying east, and backup flyers were standing by to join him. When they took off, Moody guarded Harry's back. He gave the others instructions throughout the journey to avoid Muggles seeing them and other obstacles that they had to adjust for. Moody wanted to double back to make sure that no one was following them, but the others protested, and they landed at the headquarters at number 12 Grimmauld Place. Mad-Eye was glad to have completed the mission. Moody used the deluminator that he had borrowed from Dumbledore to turn the streetlights off before they entered. Later on that summer, Moody came to a party at the headquarters that Mrs. Weasley had planned. There, he congratulated Ron on becoming a prefect. "Well, congratulations. Authority figures always attract trouble, but I suppose Dumbledore thinks you can withstand most major jinxes, or he wouldn't have appointed you." While at the party, Moody showed Harry a photo of the original Order of the Phoenix, which included Harry's parents. He pointed out many different people, many of which he recalled their bad injuries or deaths, something that made Harry feel sick. Moody saw the kids off at King's Cross and was mad that Order member Sturgis Podmore didn't show up as he was supposed to. Moody said that he was going to report him to Dumbledore, not knowing that he was under the Imperius Curse and had been arrested. A few months later, Moody escorted the Weasleys along with Harry and Hermione to St. Mungo's to see Mr. Weasley, who had been attacked and hurt by Voldemort's snake while guarding the prophecy. Because it was in the center of London, he wore a bowler hat that covered up his magical eye. He stayed close to Harry, grabbing him and pushing him to make sure he could always guard him effectively. Moody discussed the attack with Mr. and Mrs. Weasley and the fact that Harry saw through the eyes of the snake. He said that there was something funny about Harry and that all of them knew it. A few months later, Moody along with Sirius, Lupin, Tonks, and Kingsley showed up at the Department of Mysteries, aiding Harry and his friends. It was an all-out battle between the Order and the Death Eaters. During the fight, Moody dueled Antoine Dolohov. Here he realized that he was no longer the unstoppable Auror that he once was. Dolohov ended up getting the upper hand, and Moody was knocked out. He lay motionless on the ground, blood spilling out of his head. He was hit so hard that his magical eye was knocked out of its socket and it rolled away from its owner. Moody later came to, and when he did, he crawled over to Tonks, who was severely injured after her duel with Bellatrix. Moody began to revive her, hopeful that she wasn't too far gone. When the battle concluded, he helped get Tonks to St. Mungo's to receive treatment, not worried about himself, despite others' concern. Moody was very worried about Tonks, especially because he had taken her under his wing to train her as an Auror. The two had grown close, something that Moody rarely let happen. To his relief, Tonks ended up being okay. At this point in his life, Mad-Eye had begun to get more trusting and allowed himself to care for those close to him, especially with Tonks, who he saw as sort of his daughter. He showed other forms of caring when he and some other Order members met Harry at King's Cross after the school year ended. Moody led Lupin, Mr. Weasley, Tonks, and Hermione to the Dursleys. He threatened them, saying that if Harry was at all mistreated that summer, then the Dursleys would have to deal with them. Mr. Dursley asked if Mad-Eye was threatening him, and Moody said, "Yes, I am." Mr. Dursley then asked him if he looked like the kind of man that could be intimidated. He was in for a shock, as Moody lifted his bowler hat to reveal his magical eye, making Mr. Dursley jump backward. Moody replied saying, "Yes, I'd have to say you do, Dursley." Moody grasped Harry's shoulder with his gnarled hand and said goodbye to him. This was Moody's own way of showing Harry that he cared and that he was there for him. The following year, Dumbledore was killed during the Battle of the Astronomy Tower. Moody attended his longtime friend's funeral, sitting with other Order members including Tonks, Lupin, Kingsley, and the Weasleys to pay respect. After Moody found out Snape was the one to kill Dumbledore, he went to number 12 Grimmauld Place, where he knew Snape had access to. There he added a charm where his voice screamed out, "Severus," and added a tongue-tying curse that would make his tongue unravel, then made it so a figure of Dumbledore would appear. A few months later, Moody once again led a team of Order members to extract Harry from Privet Drive.
We've got to get the hell out of here!
The plan was to use Polyjuice Potion to make it so there were 7 Harrys, 6 Order members, and the real Harry. Each Harry would go with a different Order member to one of the many safe houses and use a portkey to the burrow. They had baited Voldemort and his Death Eaters to think that they weren't going for another 2 days, and because of this, they expected there to be only 2 Death Eaters standing guard. Mundungus Fletcher, one of the Order members turning into Harry, was iffy about the plan, and he was the one riding with Moody on a broomstick. Mundungus asked why he had to be with Moody, and Moody replied saying it was because he needed the most watching. Moody also knew that Voldemort would think Harry would be with the most skilled Auror, which was himself, and Voldemort surely would have told this to the Death Eaters keeping guard. This made him put Harry with Hagrid rather than him to throw them off. Moody grouped all of them together before they took off and said, "Good luck everyone, see you all in about an hour at the burrow." Everyone took off, and to their horror, they realized it was a trap. There were many more than just 2 Death Eaters, and Voldemort himself was among them. Mad-Eye and Mundungus were going north, and as were Bill and Fleur. The 4 of them broke out of the circle of the Death Eaters, and thought they were in the clear. They were quite wrong though. Voldemort, who was flying in the air, went after Moody, just as Moody predicted he would. Mundungus panicked and cried out. He took one look at Voldemort and disapparated. Voldemort had shot a curse at that exact moment. Moody turned around to try and stop Mundungus, but it was too late. The curse that was meant for Mundungus hit Moody full in the face. He fell backward off his broom, and his lifeless body fell to the ground. When Bill told everyone what had happened after the mission, everyone was shocked. Harry couldn't comprehend it. Mad-Eye dead? It couldn't be. He was so tough, so brave, the consummate survivor. As the group were waiting for Mad-Eye, they were stuck in a depressed silence, and they all realized that they could stop waiting for his return. He wasn't coming back. They all sat in the burrow, depressed. Hagrid cried in the corner, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. Bill decided to pull out fire whiskey, and they all cheersed in honor of Mad-Eye. When Bill and Lupin said that they were going to recover Moody's body, Tonks, Fleur, and Mrs. Weasley protested. But when Bill asked if they'd rather a Death Eater took it, no one protested. The two never found his body, however. Because of this, they had not been able to hold a funeral for Moody. The Daily Prophet didn't say a word about him dying or finding his body, but Bill said that this didn't mean much. Scrimgeour, the Minister of Magic, didn't want to admit that Voldemort was as powerful as he was, nor that there were a load of breakouts from Azkaban. They also didn't come after Harry for using underage magic to escape, because they did not want Harry to tell the world that Voldemort had attacked him. Death Eaters were the ones that had gotten to Mad-Eye's body first to tidy up after themselves. His magical eye was eventually taken by Umbridge, which she used to spy on the workers on the other side of her office door. When Harry saw this while they broke into the Ministry, he took the eye, furious that someone as evil as Umbridge could use it to her advantage. This alerted the Ministry to their presence, and they just barely escaped, but Harry thought it was worth it. The next morning, Harry woke up while they were camping in the woods to evade capture. He went to find the oldest, most gnarled, and resilient-looking tree. There, he buried Moody's eye and marked the spot with a small cross in the bark of the tree. Moody's whole life was his job, and he dedicated himself to protect the wizarding world. Even though it was his life's work, he did not ask for anything in return. He selflessly fought to protect, even though it made his whole body scarred, made him have loads of enemies, and gave him severe PTSD. It was wonderful to see that towards the end of his life, he was able to put work behind him and learn to care for others like Tonks, Harry, and other Order members. Because of this, he will be remembered not only as a soldier, but as a friend. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You can follow me on social media. Links for that will be down below. If you like this video, make sure you press that subscribe button to help grow the channel. I want to give a huge shout out to all my Patrons listed below. If you want to be listed on my next video, check out my Patreon. You'll be featured on the video and get a bunch of other rewards as well. Again, thank you so much for watching, and look out for more great videos on the way.